Three abreast, photo finish. Coming to the line, clash together.
But here comes Harrison Burton. Busher gets on the inside of SVG. Can you believe what you've just seen?
The 2024 NASCAR season was the most chaotic one in recent NASCAR memory. There were so many crazy, wacky, wild, and historical moments all squished together in 36 weeks of competition. And if it wasn't for a crappy points format creating an undeserved champion, it probably would have been looked on more fondly as one of the greatest seasons ever. But somewhat lost in the season was some of the many, many horrendous things that happened that year. Concerning officiating blunders, horrendous TV coverage, and when they weren't making heart-stopping moments, the racing was quite lackluster, and overall these factors would create events with far too much chaos. Ironic with how that is what made this season so memorable. But what if I told you that one race through all of the season had all of these factors thrown into one beautiful fustercluck of a race? What was supposed to be the celebration of a revival of an iconic tradition, everyone that was at the track and watching on TV were left confused and angry. But in order to understand how we got to this point, we gotta go a little bit back. Originally built in 1909, the Indianapolis Motor Speedway was one of the most recognizable racetracks in the world, thanks to it creating and hosting the biggest race in the world, the Indy 500. And as the track's prestige began to rise, NASCAR was also on the up and up as well. And it was thought that at some point NASCAR and Indy were destined to come together. However, there was a huge obstacle, that being tradition. The Indianapolis Motor Speedway was known for only one race per year, the Indy 500. Perhaps this goes back to when the track opened, where they hosted a bunch of smaller races in 1909 and 1910, but with attendance mixed across the board, in 1911 they combined the races into a 500-mile event, which became the Indy 500. Perhaps they were afraid that another race at the track would dilute the greatest spectacle in racing. The first NASCAR-related activity in Indianapolis actually dates back to a private Pontiac endurance test in 1961. And in 1970, NASCAR would sort of dip their toes into Indianapolis-style racing by building the Ontario Motor Speedway in 1970. It was a straight copy-pasta of IMS, a 2.5-mile rectangular track, even being dubbed the Indy of the West. The racing was fantastic, but due to how much it cost to build and not getting a proper return on investment, the track would be closed in 1980 with no remnants of it standing today. But back on the East Coast, serious discussions about hosting a stock car race at Indy didn't begin until the late 1970s under Speedway president John Cooper. Early attempts repeatedly failed due to resistance from Speedway leadership wanting to preserve the late Tony Holman's tradition of the Indianapolis 500 as the only race held at the track. Meanwhile, NASCAR's explosive growth throughout the 80s transformed it into America's most popular motorsport, and Indy talks ramped up. And in 1991, this would be realized by AJ Foyt. While filming a Craftsman commercial, Foyt decided to test a stock car at the Speedway and realized that NASCAR at Indy could happen. When Tony George became Speedway president, attitudes gradually shifted and announced that in June of 1992, teams would go out to Speedway, Indiana to do a tire test to see how well Cup cars would do at the track, including some hot laps run by AJ Foyt and Dale Earnhardt's 3-car. In addition, there would be a 15-lap test race at the end, which was just a taste of what was to come. And what was essentially a glorified tire test, the 10,000 people in attendance showed overwhelming interest.
All right, what do y'all think about NASCAR coming to Indy?
But if NASCAR wanted to race at Indy, they needed to update the track a little bit. This might be hard to believe, but NASCAR stock cars are much bulkier than Indy cars. So in the winter of 1992, renovations were made to Indy, with the walls being raised from 22 to 42 inches, and the pit stalls were paved with concrete to support the pneumatic jacks of IndyCar and the fuel spillages of NASCAR, and IndyCar as well. And finally, they removed the apron, deeming it to be unsafe, and replaced it with their now iconic warm-up lane in the corners. And on April 14th, 1993, the announcement was made.
There will be a NASCAR Winston Cup stock car event here at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. The name of the event will be the Brickyard 400, and it will be a 400-mile, 160-lap race.
And with that, NASCAR Indy was official, being dubbed as the Brickyard 400, marking the first ever non-IndyCar race ever held at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, with many dubbing the race as a crown jewel from the moment it was announced. Another test was hosted in 1993 with way more cars to get a better read on the track updates, with a lot more carnage than the test the year prior. And the king himself, Richard Petty, who retired the year prior, jumped into a car and ran a lap himself around the Brickyard. And in 1994, there would be another test for all the manufacturers to get more data. But when race weekend came, there were an inconceivable 86 entries that showed up to qualify for the 43-car field. You had exactly enough to run 2 full fields. This just showed that making the race was an accomplishment in and itself. And on April 6, 1994, NASCAR hosted a sold-out crowd of over 250,000 fans. Rick Mast would lead the field off in NASCAR's inaugural Brickyard 400. At the very start of the race, Dale Earnhardt really wanted to lead the first ever lap of the race. So badly, in fact, he slammed the wall in turn 4 later in the lap, but ultimately failed. And after a chaotic and entertaining show, the hometown boy would capture the checkered flag.
We'll remember the name, Jeff Gordon, winner of the inaugural Brickyard 400.
The first Brickyard 400 would be a huge success, kicking off a golden era of racing. In 1995, Dale Earnhardt became the first man to win the race, and as time would go on, it was realized that in order to be good at IMS, you had to be one of the greats. And while we would get the occasional oddball winner, the Brickyard was living up to the hype. And then the 2008 Brickyard 400 would take all of the prestige of the event, rip it to shreds, douse it in gasoline, and light it ablaze. The weekend began with the same excitement, but teams quickly discovered a major problem. Tires were destroyed after only a few laps. The combination of Indianapolis's repave, NASCAR's new car of tomorrow, and an insufficiently tested tires created a serious safety issue, forcing NASCAR to throw competition cautions every 10 to 12 laps. And the constant interruptions turned the event into a slow, single-file train with numerous tire failures. Although conditions improved as more rubber was laid down, NASCAR continued the scheduled cautions to the finish, where Jimmy Johnson cruised to his second Brickyard 400 victory. It was met with overwhelming criticism from drivers and fans alike, saying that wasn't real racing. The fallout proved far more damaging than anyone expected, as this one race permanently tarnished the Brickyard 400's reputation. For the next decade plus, attendance dropped dramatically. The event steadily lost its prestige, and by 2021, NASCAR had moved the Cup Series to the Indianapolis road course, marking the end of the Brickyard 400 for several years. And what followed was utter chaos. Curbing your enthusiasm, wacky restarts, and stupid shortcuts. And when they weren't doing their best bulldozer impressions, the racing was lackluster due to the road course racing struggling with the new Gen 7 race car. With all of this, all fans were unanimously clamoring to get the Brickyard back on the oval. And in 2024, in honor of the 30th anniversary of the inauguration, the Brickyard 400 was back. And with a new car coming to the track, there was plenty of testing to make sure there were no repeats of 08. As we approach race weekend, despite the revival of the race on the oval being a huge story, there was one other story dominating the headlines. Just a few months earlier, Kyle Larson had made his long-awaited Indianapolis 500 debut as a part of his attempt at the double, racing both the Indy 500 and the Coca-Cola 600 on the same day. But weather delayed the Indy 500 and eventually shortened the Coca-Cola 600, where Larson ran all 500 miles at Indy, but didn't even turn a lap in the 600. Now he returned to Indianapolis looking for redemption, in the same paint scheme he was supposed to run at Charlotte. And with that, for the first time since 2020, the Brickyard 400 was once again green. Once the race got underway, a very weird racing product emerged. Due to the really long straightaways and the minimal banking, the draft became quintessential to being good. So anyone that made a mistake or was just slow would break up the entire field into mini packs.
So you see right here, that's basically the front 8 cars. Last car in line, Ty Gibbs. Now here comes the next pack, led by Ricky Stenhouse. I think Stenhouse probably doesn't have the best car, and he's stacking traffic up behind him, Jeff. And that's another, say, 10 cars, the end of it being Corey LaJoie, then really the third pack.
It wasn't as bad as a 550 package race, but without the draft, it was really hard to get up to the front. But on lap 27, there would be the first major controversy of the race. Exiting pit road, Chase Elliott would go up above the pit apron line and be given a pit exit violation. And while it seems pretty cut and dry what he did, in the garage there was a lot of confusion over what the rule was.
He got a speeding penalty for the first time in 90 plus races last week, and this is what Alan Gustafson wants clarification on, Steve. Right here, he wants to know, was it when we came up in the center of the corner? And right now they're telling him it was in turn 2. That's where your blend line penalty came from, but Alan Gustafson still wants to talk to officials to understand why that happened.
Then a little bit later on lap 48, Brad Keselowski did the same thing. And again, there would be confusion in the 6 camp.
I don't know if I would call that the racing surface. That's the problem with that update.
But isn't that white line that signifies the apron of a racetrack?
Yeah, but it hasn't for 14 years that we've run the Brickyard 400. I've seen drivers go out there all the time.
After that, NASCAR would double down and say, if you go on the racing surface exiting pit road, you will be penalized. Which sounds nice, but this is something that could have been easily avoided if NASCAR just did a little bit of a better job explaining the rules prior to the start of the race. Then on the same lap, Brad's Rush teammate Chris Buescher would have a tire problem. Man, these RFK cars have been having it rough today. And a few laps later, Denny Hamlin would fend off Kyle Larson to win stage 1. And then a few laps after the stage restart, Cody Ware would blow out a tire and the tire carcass would fall off the car, bringing out a debris caution. Also, right before the yellow, Bubba Wallace and Joey Logano got real dicey. But when it comes to Calamity, it gets much crazier half a lap later.
You just want to be the front of your strategy. Oh man, big wreck.
Oh, and hit again.
Oh,
that's the 24 of William Byron. AJ Allmendinger in the 16 involved as well.
And after that, nothing. Despite the restarts getting pretty wild, as that would be a theme for the rest of the day, once everyone got into their groups of cars, this race got boring. Most racetracks of this size, stuff would happen to keep the race engaging, and overall still puts on a fantastic show. It's not flashy, but it's appreciated by race fans. But due to the lack of passing, everyone is just riding around in groups of choo-choo racing. But fortunately, we would all be stimulated once again when Bubba Wallace would win the second stage, bringing out the 4th caution of the day. And following this, another quick volley of cautions would commence.
And another wreck behind him, the 4. Josh Berry gets into the wall. Oh, and into the turn 1 wall early. The 22 of Logano and the 24. It can't be the 24. 84 of Jimmy Johnson.
7 Tyler Reddick following down pit road, and a caution, Rick, maybe on the racetrack. Martin Truex Jr.
After Martin Truex's wreck with 36 laps to go, the racing started to get more interesting, not only because the end of the race was near, so it would naturally be more aggressive, but a few strategies were emerging. Both Brad Keselowski and Daniel Hemrick would pit on lap 102 at the end of the second stage caution, trying to get all the way to the end of the race. It's a tall order, but they think they can go to the end with some cautions, which they have gotten previously. A majority of the field is pitted around lap 112 to 113 under the restart big one. And the few final drivers like Kyle Larson, Chase Elliott, and Tyler Reddick pitted under green prior to the Truex wreck. They got partially screwed by the yellow, restarting towards the back of the teens, but luckily they were some fast cars, most notably Kyle Larson. With Kyle by far having the fastest car, he was really the only car to slice his way through the field, and once it was time to go, he got going. Once Kyle Larson passed Daniel Hemrick, our top 3 contenders were set on different strategies. Brad Keselowski, the leader, was trying to stretch his fuel all the way to the end from this beginning of the 3rd stage. And in second place, we have Ryan Blaney, who is looking to pounce on Keselowski if he runs out of fuel, and trying to take advantage of the passing problems all day to hold off Kyle Larson. Speaking of Kyle, he's in 3rd. With him pitting the latest, he is on offense trying to get redemption from earlier in the year. If someone had to be on offense, Kyle is the perfect guy. So we have one person fighting for his life, stretching the laws of fuel strategy, another hoping to capitalize on an opportunity, and a third looking to fiercely take home some revenge. Finally, this race has some substance. Let's see how this plays out.
Coming out. Oh, and we got a caution that comes out. It's the 8 of Kyle Busch.
Well, that was anticlimactic. Although we hit the scheduled distance, it was time for overtime. To give a quick explanation, when a caution comes out at the end of the race, in order to get a green flag finish, NASCAR created overtime in 2004. It added 2 more laps to the end of a race, and as long as the leader took the white flag, the race would be official. If another incident happens before the leader takes the white flag, though, NASCAR can throw another caution to re-rack the field for an unlimited amount of times. This was put on full display when there were a record-setting 5 overtimes in Nashville earlier that year, where it took so long to finish the race that the original leaders at the scheduled distance had to pit because they ran out of fuel, causing Joey Logano to break the rules of fuel strategy to win the race, with it overall being a very insignificant win in the grand scheme of things. But anyways, if the leader takes the white flag, the race will end either if the leader takes the checkered flag or if the caution comes out. And let me tell you, despite just 400 miles of racing, this event is just getting started. As the drivers are pacing under the caution flag, there are many questions regarding if Brad Keselowski could make it to the end on fuel, but he decides to stay out, hoping he can putter around for another 5 miles. But coming up to take the green, Brad Keselowski's tank runs dry. And this one change makes the entire race go to shit.
Presented by Credit One Bank. Blaney on the outside, Larson on the inside. Green flag back in the air. 2 laps of racing in Indy. Who else is going to run out? And a wreck in turn 1. The caution comes out, there'll be another restart.
Now that you saw what happened, let's break this down. When Brad runs out of gas, the entire inside lane moves up a row, and as a result, for some reason, Kyle Larson would inherit the lead and control of the race, which absolutely screwed over Ryan Blaney, and he was not happy.
That's no way that he gets to jump up a row and I get because someone runs that again. It ain't over. Over? I'm on the top. You gonna win from the top? Give it to Golden Boy. Son of a.
For some reason, NASCAR decides not to call off the restart and lets it go green, even though they had about a solid 10 seconds to reverse the decision and call off the restart. And not only Kyle has control of the field and when to go in the restart zone and getting the jump on the field, but going into turn 1, a 9-degree banked corner, Larson easily got the lead from Blaney with the shorter way around the track. But that isn't all what happened. Due to the nature of there being a 2-to-go restart, everyone was put into panic mode. And as a result, John Hunter Nemechek would make one of the worst blocks I've ever seen in my life, causing a humongous crash, and Nemechek and Daniel Hemrick would hit the wall so hard that they broke the concrete barrier, causing the race to be red flagged, along with cleaning up the debris from the destroyed race cars. And due to the cleanup taking an incredibly long time, NBC, the broadcaster of the race, was running out of time in their TV window they had provided for the race, and decided it was taking too long. So it was booted off of Big NBC, and the rest of the race would finish on the USA Network. It was theorized that the race was moved because NBC wanted to cover the breaking news of current President Joe Biden dropping out of the 2024 presidential election race. This had been known for hours now though at the time, so it wasn't like this was an immediate breaking news story. So it really felt unnecessary to kind of just cut away, but maybe NBC had the script and just wanted to hide the embarrassment that was about to come next. After the cleanup was finally over, NASCAR put the race back under caution and was ready to go back racing. They decided not to make any changes to the running order and was ready to go back green. This time, they did not wreck going into turn 1, and Kyle Larson ran off with the lead. But moments later, Ryan Preece would spin off of turn 2, which is going to cause another re-rack and restack.
No. The play prediction almost came true.
They're not going to throw it.
Another caution for another Preece.
Oh my god.
If that car will continue.
Oh, bullshit.
All right, stop on track. Caution, come on.
He's stuck. No, come on. No.
What the fuck?
Oh, God.
NASCAR.
It's a fucking joke, dude.
They're gonna throw it, yeah.
That's ridiculous.
There's the caution. Larson's gonna do it. Larson is gonna win the Brickyard 400.
We get back to the line.
Well, Ryan Preece would throw it back to the year prior when he spun out at Pocono and couldn't move because he had a flat tire. But anyways, what possible reasons led to getting one of the worst mismanaged moments in NASCAR history? My primary reasoning for waiting on the caution was that NASCAR was afraid of what could have happened. Throughout all of 2024, 13 of the 36 races in that season ended in overtime, so about 1/3 of the time NASCAR had to add extra laps just to get a finish to the race. Earlier I mentioned that the Nashville race ended in 5 overtimes and how much chaos had happened. Perhaps they wanted to avoid having that again, taking an already long race, a bunch of on-edge drivers, wrecking them about 20 times, all to get a winner that probably didn't deserve to win. But the problem with this though is that this goes against the entire ethos of NASCAR overtime. The whole point of doing this is to make sure that the fans get a race to the line, not to ride around the pace car to do it. The people in the control tower were worried about a hypothetical outcome, and when they saw Ryan Preece spin out again, they basically said, screw it, it's beer o'clock, I'm out of here. But an alternate reasoning that I have is a bit sketchy. By no means am I claiming that NASCAR spent the entire time rigging the race so that Kyle Larson would win, as that would be almost impossible with the infinite amount of variables that could happen in a NASCAR race. But I do believe that deep down, if the opportunity arises for Kyle Larson, NASCAR would bend the rules to make sure that he could get the win. Now, why would NASCAR possibly do this? I mean, it makes for a good story. Nearly all of NASCAR's most iconic moments have always come with some sort of narrative that makes them special, and NASCAR had a pretty good one on their hands today. Kyle Larson winning at Indy after his issues with the double is a pretty cool headline to have on Monday. If there's a good story that could come out of a race, NASCAR would do their level best to make sure that they get the result they want without making it completely obvious. And with that, what was supposed to be an exciting revival of a once great crown jewel event ended up being a boring race with bad officiating, horrendous TV coverage, and a finish that had everyone shaking their heads and with a sour taste in their mouth, and questioning why we ever came back to this in the first place. By the way, on the left side of the screen, go check out my good friend Tim Brownie's video on the entire history of NASCAR at the Brickyard. It's a fantastic watch.